Welcome in to the opening line report. Kelly Stewart here on this beautiful Monday morning on the East Coast. Teddy covers there on a beautiful Monday morning on the West Coast. We're going to get right into it. This is a information show, guys. Remember, we are the opening line report. Numbers came out. I think I saw Circa tweet right before I went to bed after Sunday Night Football, their week 4 NFL line. So I, of course, had to update my little survivor spreadsheet, Teddy, because that's just the kind of person that I am. So we're going to go over some of these opening numbers. We're going to compare them to your power ratings, maybe talk about what some of these lines were over the summer, and really start to dive deep into what we saw last week and what kind of tangible information we can use for this week. Ready to get into Monday Night Football before we get into week 4?
Sure, let's do that. A minor correction. I don't care what the lines were over the summer. The lines over the summer were those are based on off-season power ratings. What we focus on opening line report, of course, is the look headlines from last week. So we see how much the one game affected the perception of these two teams, and that's the focus. So lots of power rating numbers, lots of we could have a handful of emergency betting alerts this morning. So
well, let me get ready. I'm very excited. I love those emergency betting alerts. We got to get on those swift and fast, and that's why we do the show bright and early on Monday morning. Let's get into Monday Night Football. The Detroit Lions, Baltimore Ravens. We've seen some interesting line moves here. Talk to me about, well, I think arguably one of the best teams in the NFC versus arguably one of the best teams in the AFC.
Sure, and of course, we talked about this game last Monday, and I gave you an emergency betting alert on the Lions +6 because that line couldn't hold, and it didn't hold. We're looking at 4.5 right now. And it bottomed at 4, and then we've seen some Ravens buyback up to 4.5. And this, to me, feels a little bit like a sharp square divide game. The pros love Baltimore. They love Baltimore. Some of my friends are telling me that the Ravens are a field goal better than anyone else in the league. My powering numbers don't show that. My powering numbers say that Baltimore is one of the elite teams, and there's obviously 5-6 teams at the very top of the power ratings, but there are those in the markets that right now have Baltimore a field goal better than anyone, or close to a field goal, 2 to 3 points better than anybody. If they dominate tonight, maybe I'll have them in my power rating to that number, but currently I don't. So and the markets obviously with opening at 6 and bet down to 4, and now we're seeing 4.5. That is pro money on Baltimore. Total seeing nothing but over money. And considering the potential potency of these two offenses, I'm not surprised. That said, at 53.5, I'm not sensing it's going to get a whole lot higher than it is. So urgency right now, no, this number is going to stick around 4.5, 53.5 between now and kickoff.
All right, let's go to Thursday Night Football. Primarily the reason why I played the Saints yesterday. And we're going to get into that game and why it got away from the Saints rather quickly. But the Seattle Seahawks take on the Arizona Cardinals. San Fran sneaks out a win there over Arizona by 1 point. That was an interesting final result because, well, that's what I like to talk about on the Kelly Murray Show. Games that land one. It always is hilarious to me. Let's talk about Seattle. Now, Arizona is -1.
Sure. And I'm tempted. Let's just talk about it. Look headline, Arizona -2.5, total of 45. My powering number says the Seahawks should be favored here. My powering number is Seattle -1. The markets have Arizona -1 right now, total 43.5. We haven't seen any movement on this total. I'm not anticipating necessarily any movement. We could see a little bit of under money, but nothing shocking. But from a side standpoint, I would not be surprised. So the Seahawks were a team that a lot of people hated this offseason. I'm one of them. We were against Seattle in my season win report, and I expected this team to go through some pretty ugly growing pains. And through 3 weeks of the season, Seattle looks better than people thought they were going to look, myself included. Sam Darnold looks very comfortable in that offense. What we're seeing with Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba and Torrey Horton, the 5th-round rookie out of Colorado State, who's been phenomenal for them. And he's a guy who was hurt his senior year. He dropped in the draft as a result. But yesterday, a 95-yard punt return touchdown. He looks like a star already. So they have wide receiver depth. Darnold's looked good. The defense has looked good for Seattle. And Arizona's offense isn't working right now. It's going to get worse with the James Conner injury. Now he's out for the year. We don't worry too much about running back injuries, but Conner is kind of one of those heart and soul guys for this team. And boy, that offense struggled against San Francisco. Multiple key drops, whether it's a Zay Jones drop that would have allowed them to run out the clock instead of punting back to San Francisco for the game-winning drive, or the Marvin Harrison dropped a touchdown pass, or the DeMarcado dropped a third down pass that led to a field goal instead of a touchdown. The pass game's not working. The run game's not working. The offensive line's not controlling the flow. There are issues right now for Arizona. And, of course, they missed a field goal again. That loomed large in a 1-point loss. 4.1 yards per play for Arizona. 1 for 3 in the red zone. These are ongoing problems. Calais Campbell won that game for Arizona on a safety, the holding in the end zone. And then they found a way to lose it. Certainly the short turnaround gives them an opportunity. But again, early in the season, we don't mind road teams in short turnaround spots. Not surprised at all if we see some Seattle money between now and kickoff. Again,
all right, Teddy, a team that could not have looked better yesterday. You and I watched this game, and I shouldn't say we didn't even watch it. Just every single time it popped on Red Zone, the Vikings were in the red zone, and they looked rather dominant. Again, Kevin O'Connell proving it doesn't matter who's under center for him. He's got this offense clicking. They're facing the Steelers that were, I would argue, maybe gifted a win by the New England Patriots.
Sure. Look ahead line here. Pittsburgh 1-41. Of course, this game is in Dublin. It's an early start game. Don't sleep in if you want to bet Steelers and Vikings. 6:30 a.m. Pacific time start, 9:30 on the East Coast. So look headline, Pittsburgh -1. My powering number, Minnesota -1.5. Opened 1.5 and 41 last night. We've seen a big move towards the Vikings this morning. I'm seeing 2.5s out there, 2.5s with juice, and 3s are starting to pop up. Now, at 3, I would expect we'll see a little bit of take back for Pittsburgh. So I'm not going to emergency betting alert this one, even though you can find 2.5s right now. I'm not convinced they'll be there forever. But at 3, I would think that we'll get some buyback. So this is a situation where the other line's already moved. The best of the number is gone. And of course, Minnesota had 2 defensive touchdowns. They forced 5 turnovers in yesterday's game. But the key was Carson Wentz. The key was not Carson. The key was Minnesota's defense. The key may have been Christian Darrisaw being back on the offensive line for Minnesota, and Harrison Smith, 2 guys who made their season debuts and had an impact immediately when your left tackle comes back after missing 11 months. And then, Harrison Smith had he deflected the pass that got returned for a pick 6. Certainly positive signs injury-wise for Minnesota. And of course, let's not forget, Carson Wentz was sitting at home a month ago. He didn't have any preseason with Minnesota, and that concerned me when it came to this past week's game. And of course, it didn't matter against Cincinnati because the defense was able to control the flow, and Wentz was playing with a lead. That could happen here because Pittsburgh, you say that New England gifted them the victory. There's certainly something to be said for that. Yards per play, Pittsburgh 4.1, New England 5.2. 2 of the Patriots' 5 turnovers came to the Steelers' 2-yard line. They did sack Drake May 5 times, so the defense did some things right. When you force 5 turnovers and get 5 sacks, you're feeling good. But Aaron Rodgers, just 139 passing yards. Only 1 play for Pittsburgh of 20-plus yards in that ballgame. This offense is explosive, and let's call it how it is. Right now, Aaron Rodgers is not very good, like last year and the year before and the year before that. But he sure gets a lot of publicity. From a situational standpoint, worth noting, week 5 bye for Pittsburgh. This is their last game before the bye. We spent all this time talking about teams after the bye week, when in fact, before the bye week is often a better bet on spot for these squads. No one wants to go into 2 weeks off, especially 2 weeks under Tomlin, coming off back-to-back losses. So there's certainly something to be said for the effort for Pittsburgh. Worth noting also, Minnesota will play back-to-back games overseas. So with all the benefit of next week at this time, having stayed in Europe already.
All right, let's talk about the Eagles headed to the Bucs. Teddy, hand up. Very, very lucky to cash that Eagles ticket with the Prez yesterday on End Zone Live. That was absolutely a crazy result. Teddy, when those types of results happen, what do you chalk it up as? Just bad luck? Do you chalk it up as things aren't going my way? How do you look at it? And maybe not overreact for those at home that probably had the Rams, great number plus 4.5, things like that.
So I had the Rams. My clients had the Rams. Last week I had the Broncos. My clients had the Broncos. Week 1, we had the Cowboys and Eagles over, where they scored the first 8 possessions, 9 possessions, they fumbled the red zone, and then the lightning delay, and they never scored another point.
What an awful trifecta.
Yeah, that's a nice way to, and that's the difference between me starting the season 80%. I'm not a high volume player. If I didn't have those 3 beats, I'd be hitting 80% right now. Instead, I'm hitting 50% full, through the first 3 weeks. So what do? This is something that's worth noting. All right. It's true in poker. It's true in sports betting. It doesn't even out. If you're on right sides, you're going to take more bad beats than if you're on wrong sides. It's plain and simple. You might get some more lucky ones if you're on wrong sides, but you're on right sides, the bad beats are coming to you. It doesn't even out. That's it. We all get lucky wins. Sometimes we get stupid lucky wins, and we kind of forget about them when you go through a stretch where you can't win the close games that you're supposed to win. Like LA yesterday, it was pretty much a right side and found a way to lose, but it's the nature of the game. All right. I'm still pissed off about it Monday morning. That's why one of these things I like doing about this show is it's cathartic. You go through it, you get it out of your system, and you can look at the next week cleanly. But that loss is still affecting me today. It affected me all night, all day yesterday. So I'm glad you got a moment of enjoyment out of it with Prez. But it really freaking sucked when you had the right side the whole way, and it obviously didn't pan out that way. But they're going to happen, and the answer is suck it up or don't do this.
There you go. That is great advice.
There's no middle ground.
Betting is not for the weak-minded.
There are issues for Philadelphia right now. By the way, talking about Eagles, Bucs. We talking about Eagles Bucs? Is that where we are?
Yes, that's where we are.
All right. So look at line. Philly minus 2.5, 46. My powering number is Philly minus 1.5. The markets are at 3 for the Eagles. And 45 is where they opened. I'm seeing 44.5, the prevailing number. I'm not sensing it's going to go down any further. I'm not seeing any groundswell of Tampa money yet. Right now, 3 and 45/44.5 is where I expect it to stay for at least the time being until we get injury report stuff. Now, Saquon Barkley, we have to talk about Saquon Barkley for a minute. 3 games, he's averaging 3.3 yards per carry. Last year, he had 345 rush attempts in the regular season, another 91 in the playoffs. His previous career high came in 2022 when he had 295 in the regular season and 18 in the playoffs. This is an 8-year veteran with a lot of miles on those legs, and it feels to me, at least right now, Saquon doesn't have the same burst. We're not getting the big plays from Philly's running game. And again, when you're 3.3 yards per carry, you're 18 of 46 yesterday, that is a concern. That being said, it's a concern for a team that's finding ways to win games. 3 of 3 in the red zone, and they only allowed 1 of 4 in the red zone. So that red zone efficiency on both sides of the football, and obviously the Jordan Davis blocked field goal at the end of the game. Philly's now 19-1 straight up their last 20 games. By far the best team in the NFL in that span. That being said, there are things to like about Tampa right now. In 3 games, the Bucs have trailed in the fourth quarter in all 3, and they've won all 3. And if you ask me, would I rather have a team that opens the season with 3 blowouts or 3 come from behind wins? I'll choose the latter anytime. Now that team builds confidence, whereas a blowout team, they get a little fat and happy sometimes. Look at Green Bay for an example. Baker Mayfield, quote, resilient group. We stick together, the whole team. And one part of it or phase is a little down. Others have to step it up and be there for you. That's what this team is all about. We support each other no matter what. Tampa, just 1 of 5 in the red zone. They had 14 penalties. They had a field goal blocked in return for a touchdown, and they still won the game straight up. They outgained the Jets by 1.2 yards per play. Todd Bowles after the game. 3-0 is important. It's important to win in this league. A lot of teams be crying because they lost close games. We lost some last year. We're winning them this year. So we're extremely happy about that. 2 teams that are pretty happy about their early season performances. One team has clearly shown they have the resilience to come back from deficits in the fourth quarter. Philly managed to do it yesterday, but again, they lost that game. They just had, and Sundays, the whole thing, college football, you expect kicking zaniness. You really do. And then one of the things I always loved is that Saturdays you have kicking zanius and special teams that are going to cost you when you bets. And Sundays, the kickers make their kicks. No, not yesterday. Obviously, had a huge difference for Philadelphia and LA. But right now, this line's not moving. 344.5. And I'm not sensing that it's likely to go anytime soon.
All right, just over 1,600 of you guys watching with us live here on the opening line report. Teddy, before we get into the Saints at the Bills, let everybody kind of know what's going on over at WagerTalk.com this week, what you've got up for your clients.
Yeah, I'm bitching and moaning because of the losses, and they're frustrating. That said, we went 7-2 across sports this weekend, 6-1 in football. I can't complain too much. It was a good weekend for the clients. We made a bunch of money. I just wanted it to be better and win them all. And that's, I put a lot of work into the NFL this week. This was the week we're supposed to break out. And we went 2-1, but the one was freaking the Rams, and that's pretty annoying. That being said, locked and loaded. I'm not in play for Monday Night Football. I have a single best bet on MLB for today. We went 4-0 on college football Saturday. I love this college football card this week. And, of course, the NFL. You'll hear my first takes right here. We'll have plays posted throughout the week. So check out my homepage, wt.buzz/TC. Don't buy a play. Get on board with the package. Again, pick buying isn't for everyone. I get it. But if you want to partner up, no, I'd be a pretty good time. I'm pissed off. I'm motivated, and we're in decent current form. So for what it's worth, you check out any of the extended service packages. You can get a monthly package, a weekly package, rest of the year package. Great deals on my page, wt.buzz/TC.
Teddy, I found an interesting tweet regarding the next game. Saints are 16.5-point underdogs at Buffalo this week. This is New Orleans' biggest underdog in any game since November of 1975. The matchup that day was Archie Manning and Frank Tarkenton for the Vikings. Very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Fran Tarkenton. There's no K at the end of it.
Well, you know what? Blame Evan Abrams. He had it wrong. I wasn't born yet, so I don't remember, but I did find that to be very interesting. This is a huge number. Kind of break down what these double-digit spreads mean for people looking to bet this side or either side of this game.
So, and I can't believe that the Katrina year that they weren't big, they had to be 2 touchdown dogs a couple times that year because that was an awful team. Aaron Brooks was the quarterback of the Katrina year, and I think they won 3 games that season, and things went pretty south pretty fast post-Katrina for a team that didn't have a home. My look-ahead line here was Buffalo 16.5, total 47.5. Again, the bettable numbers from last week. My powering number only has the Bills 14.5 for the game. When you start getting into the spreads above 2 touchdowns, I factor in home field less and less. I think I make home field 1 point for those games. And I wouldn't argue if you made it 0 because there's not much of a home field edge in that contest. And obviously the Saints look pretty dismal yesterday. So my power rating number is 14 for the game. That said, I'm not anticipating a groundswell of Saints support in this one. Opened 16.5, 47.5 last night. We've seen some 48s pop this morning. When you talk about double-digit spreads in the NFL, I don't play a lot of the games. I really don't. This is not a league that is as popular as it is because it doesn't have parity. And the Saints certainly have a better game in them than what we saw yesterday. Yesterday, they were pretty awful. And Buffalo is most assuredly the type of team that we've seen it over and over again in the Sean McDermott era. Do we trust the Bills to beat up the weaker teams? No, these are the games that they often have hiccups in. I'll leave it at that. For New Orleans, they had issues on the offensive line yesterday. They're going to be shorting, the right tackle, inactive. The guard didn't travel with the team last week. The defense was pretty awful in terms of Sam Darnold. I mean, they allowed 12.1 yards per pass attempt. That's disaster territory. They did stuff to run, though. Only 2.6 yards per carry allowed if you're looking for a positive sign. But again, you give up a block punt touchdown. You give up a punt return touchdown. The box score lies for this game. It says the game was even. First downs and yardage, it was. That said, when you're dominant on special teams, and again, punt return, touchdown, block punt that led to a touchdown, when the special teams are dominant, it makes your offensive statistics look weaker and your defense statistics look weaker because you're traveling longer fields or shorter fields on offense, and you're allowing opponents to travel longer fields on defense because you're winning the field position war. So special team success, like Seattle showed, can lead to box scores that lie. And of course, Spencer Rattler, he's not answering questions positively right now. He's 0-9 as a starter. Saints are 0-7 their last 7. And penalties continue to be a problem. Again, it's a first-time head coach in Kellen Moore. I've not been impressed with how well coached New Orleans is early in the season. They're averaging more than 10 penalties per game. For Buffalo, there are some questions. Is this run defense vulnerable? They got lit up by Baltimore. Miami had plenty of success moving the football too. They allowed 10 of 15 third down conversions last week and 3 of 3 red zone touchdowns. After the 2 weeks of the season, they had the best third down defense in the league, and that obviously not the case. But of course, Josh Allen didn't have any interceptions, and James Cook had 100 rushing yards. And when that happens, the Bills are going to win. But Josh Allen didn't complete a pass thrown more than 10 yards downfield. Sean McDermott, good win, never easy. I thought the grit, the mental toughness of our football team was on display throughout the game, particularly in the fourth quarter there. I worry about the Bills looking right past New Orleans. I don't want Buffalo in this spot. Coming off a big divisional win. They played on Thursday night, extra time to prepare, just like Green Bay had. The Bills, this has Buffalo falls asleep with a 2-touchdown lead written all over it.
That does not shock me in the slightest, but I cannot say I would want any part of this Saints team after yesterday.
Let me push back. Wasn't the Saints the team you loved yesterday?
I love the Saints. I thought it was a good spot for them.
So when you love a team one week and they get annihilated, isn't the next week the right time to come back with them?
You would think, but Teddy, they had opportunities against the Cardinals. They had opportunities against the Niners at home. Then they get blown out at Seattle. A couple wonky special teams, touchdowns, defensive touchdowns. I turned it off. It was 21-0. I tweeted, you know what? There went my 5-0 day and the super contest next. And I went and enjoyed my afternoon because those are the types of things that I'm not going to let ruin a good morning. And so I kind of just let it be. Now they're still on the road at a team that I would probably argue is the best team in the AFC. And you're right. I would agree with you. Buffalo doesn't care about this game. Why would they? But we did see last Thursday night, everybody had their thoughts about the Dolphins, and the Dolphins were in the mix late. So I'm with you. I understand not overreacting to 1 week, but I think this is now coupled with several weeks where I'm like, Buffalo could win this game 34-10, and none of us would be surprised.
Not at all. They're a lot better than New Orleans.
And that's the unfortunate part here. Okay, let's talk about the Panthers. The Panthers spoiled a lot of Falcons survivor bettors yesterday, and the Patriots were a team I'm looking at survivor this week, and my partner's already texted me, absolutely not, you are out of your mind. And I said, okay, I was just trying to zig a little bit. This is the only spot that I think they can win this football game.
So look at line here, New England 545.5. My powering number is only 4 for the contest. Markets opened 4-44 last night. And what are we seeing today? 5.5 early money for New England. Total 44. I'm even seeing some 43.5 there. So we've seen Patriots money. We've seen under money from the get-go in this one. And look, Carolina did some things very right yesterday. They had a pick 6, but they were outgained 4.1 yards per play to 5.0. They had no rush longer than 8 yards, only one completion longer than 12. Bryce Young only 121 yards passing at 5 yards per pass attempt. Those are not good numbers. That said, they put a defense. Their defense came to play. First shutout since 2020, the most lopsided win since 2015. Quote, we were all fed up. Our bond is just so tight. We wanted to go out there and do it right. Bryce Young, we had an emphasis on urgency to start fast. The defense getting a stop right off the bat. The offense going down and getting a score. I think that was big. Defensive end Derek Brown. This is what we've been waiting for coming out of camp. I feel like this is how we executed during training camp, the physicality we had during camp. To be able to come out here and put it on display and get the results we did today, we're happy about it. You want Carolina off a win? I don't. Patriots, 26 first downs, only 14 points. Turnovers, they have 5 of them. They outgained Pittsburgh by more than a full yard per play. They held the Steelers to 4.1 yards per play. But, when you have 5 turnover games, you don't win. Mike Vrabel, we don't need to lose a football game to know that turnovers are very hard to overcome. they erase all the good things that you do. Drake May sacked twice, threw a pick, lost a fumble. Or Ramondre Stevenson fumbled twice and saw the bench. Antonio Gibson fumbled. May, quote, just hurting ourselves. It hurts. It's one of those things that just kept piling on. And of course, 2 of their 5 turnovers came at the Steelers' 2-yard line. So it certainly is the type of scenario where I'm not surprised. We've seen New England money. New England outplayed Pittsburgh yesterday, but screwed up. It's supposed to be a bounce back spot at home. Carolina is not a team that bettors expect necessarily to go on winning streaks. And they sounded a little bit fat and happy off snapping that skid. All that being said, I mean, are the Patriots really a team we want to be laying 5.5 points with? I won't be on New England this week. I don't think so. Not at all. And right now, I'm not seeing at 5.5. I don't see this line going a whole lot higher. Again, my powering number is only 4 for the Patriots. The markets are moving in the other direction from a line that was 4.5 last night.
CT, my survivor partner, texts me, I would rather sit in the electric chair than use my money. This is a real quote from him. Than bet my money on the New England Patriots. I said, no problem. We're going to move right along to another option. It's probably going to be Houston. We'll get into that game here in a minute. Teddy, we've got the Falcons taking on the Browns. Browns was my bright spot on Bet On It this week. I said, this is my barking dog. I think they have a chance to win outright here at home. Falcons couldn't have looked worse versus Carolina. You kind of already touched on Carolina didn't look all that great. Let's break down this one.
Atlanta had a pretty rough game. Look ahead line here. Atlanta pick 'em against Washington, total of 44. My powering numbers came Commanders -2. The market's 2.5/3 last night. I'm not seeing many 3s out there right now. There's one at DK. That's the only one that I see on the Odds Logic Live odds screen. So 2.5, the prevailing number here for Washington. Total sitting at 45, down from 45.5 last night. There are still a couple of 45.5s out there as we speak. The Commanders certainly did something right with Mariota at QB. 9.9 yards per pass attempt, and we may well see Mariota again this week with Jalen Daniels ailing. They scored 41 points. The offense had 7.4 yards per play, 1.7 yards per play edge over the Raiders, 200 rushing yards. And when you have 200 rushing yards at 6.3 yards per carry, and your backup quarterback's throwing for 9.9 yards per pass attempt, that's a really strong offensive performance, or a really bad defensive performance like we saw from the Raiders. Punt return touchdown, 2. There are some issues on the injury front for Washington. They got cluster injuries in the secondary right now. Will Harris, Percy Butler, Marshawn Lattimore, Trey Amos, all banged up after yesterday's ball game. And that's certainly a concern for Atlanta, who was pretty bad. You talk about Michael Penix, 36 attempts, 172 yards, 4.8 yards per pass attempt, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, one of them a pick 6. They did run the ball effectively, 5.7 yards per carry. They did outgain Carolina by nearly a yard per play, but they got shut out. They didn't make it to the red zone. They went 0-3 on 4th downs. Atlanta scored just 1 touchdown in the past 2 games, and that touchdown came literally when Minnesota let them score the touchdown so the Vikings would get the ball back. There's ongoing kicker issues now. Remember, Young-Ho Koo got cut. They brought in Parker Romo, and Parker Romo missed multiple field goals in yesterday's ball games. This is the last game before the bye for Atlanta, so there is urgency here for the Falcons as home dogs. That being said, Washington has taken again, my parting of numbers 2. We're seeing 2.5 and 3, so we're seeing at least some early market support for the Commanders, but not enough to hold this line at a field goal.
All right, Browns are headed to Detroit. Detroit plays tonight, Teddy, and you always tell me here on Monday mornings, look, if you like Detroit, bet them now. If you don't like Detroit tonight, bet against them now.
Sure, and I'm going to say something in reference to that. Has to do with parlay. This is a parlay spot, all right? And I keep on getting yelled at from one of my wise guy buddies who calls me after the show and critiques me. And he's like, you got to tell him to parlay. Don't straight bet. Parlay. If you want to bet against Detroit, parlay against Detroit tonight with against Detroit next week. If you want to parlay on Detroit. You bet on Detroit tonight and then on Detroit next week. And that's a better ROI than just straight betting the 2 bets. So that does make sense if you have the opportunity to do that. It doesn't hurt in terms of locking in the best of the number. Great advice. And I always appreciate, again, I don't mind if I get criticized, all right? I don't do everything right. And it's really important, especially when you're in a space for a long time. Like, oh, he's a legend. Shut up. Tell me when I'm wrong, It's okay. Because you need that constant feedback. You need that constant appraisal of what you're doing, or it's you end up like the Buffalo Bills. You end up a little fat and happy when you're playing the New Orleans Saints that week. Anyhow, look ahead line here. Detroit 9.5, 46.5. My powering number going into Monday Night Football, Detroit 10. The market's right now 8.5 and 45. The number, there are some 45.5s out there. The leading indicator books are down to 45 on this ball game. And look, Cleveland, to say they stole that game yesterday, yeah. The defense has been dominant, and now they have a running game with Quinshon Judkins, the rookie, who got 894 yards on the ground yesterday. But the Packers gained just 2.6 yards per carry in that ball game. Cleveland came in with the number 1 overall defense, and the defense dominated the contest. Complimentary football. That being said, they also went 0-3 straight up and against the spread off a win last year. And some of the quotes coming out of yesterday's game, a little bit happy, a little bit, they're not fat and happy, but bad teams off a win, teams that aren't used to winning off a victory, sometimes they don't have that same level of effort the following week. So, and of course, let's not forget, Cleveland's offense is not about to get a whole lot better anytime soon. They're still playing without both starting offensive tackles, and Joe Flacco is, if you're ranking starting quarterbacks, Flacco's near the bottom at this stage of his career.
All right, Teddy. So question, just because I noticed the comment section, not necessarily on this show, but other shows, they do sometimes like the Survivor talk. Detroit in this spot, you mentioned, hey, look, this is the Browns now here on the road. Do you think this is a home game that Detroit loses?
No.
Okay.
But let's see what happens. Is Detroit going to come in fat and happy off a Monday Night Football upset and look completely past them? Maybe. Good point. So we'll keep an eye on tonight's game. Another game that I have listed on my Survivor sheet is the Texans. The Titans, boy, oh boy. Did they look okay week 1, right? I came on the show and said, hey, if Cam Ward's receivers could catch the ball, Denver was going to lose that football game. But ever since, they have just looked absolutely dreadful. A lot of people are saying Callahan might be the first coach fired. Brian Dable may have something to say about that, or Mike McDaniel. We'll see how the next couple of weeks go. But talk to me about this Tennessee team headed into Houston. Before I do that, let's get an emergency betting alert out for this one, because it's time. Like Houston Texans, bet them sooner rather than later. The look-ahead line here, Texans -7, Texans -9. The market's open 7 and 39.5 last night, and we're seeing signs that this line is going to move to 7.5 any minute. It's already moved to 7.5 in a number of books. So if you want Houston, there are 7s available right now. And again, my powering number says this line should be 9. This is circle the wagons time for a Texan. I mean, you want to talk about tough beats. The Texans have had 3 tough ones to open the season. They snatched defeat from the jaws of victory every week. Week 1, they had the Rams. They were driving for the game-winning score, and Ogunwale fumbled in the red zone when they were about to beat LA. That cost them the game. Week 2 against Tampa, the missed 2-point conversion, the missed sack on 4th and 10, and then allowed the game-winning touchdown with 6 seconds left. Week 3, tied 10-10. Nico Collins catches. It's a first down. They're under 3 minutes to play for the Jags 20. Houston's going to run out the clock and win that game. And then Nico fumbled. So they have literally snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in all 3 games. And, finger pointing at the coach, finger pointing at the quarterback. 3 straight games, this offense hasn't gotten to 20. Stroud, 599 yards and 2 touchdown passes through 3 games. New offense coordinator Nick Caley. This offense is going to work. Issues still on the offensive line. No run game to speak of. No receiver other than Collins has really stepped up. And, of course, when we talk about laying a price with Houston, last year they had 10 wins. 8 of them came by single digits. This isn't necessarily a blowout team. That being said, Tennessee is a blowout team, and that's on the negative. The offensive line's been overmatched, really has. And this is a mismatch when you talk about Houston's defensive front versus Tennessee's offensive front. Cam Ward's under constant pressure. Sacked 4 times, picked 6 in the first possession. Tony Pollard, only 2.8 yards per carry. Worth noting some of the quotes from the other team, from Indy, about Tennessee yesterday. This is Tennessee, 0-2 Tennessee team, where the head coach is already on the hot seat. He said the Titans looked sluggish during pregame warmups. We're like, they don't want to play today. And I think that's how we found our edge today. It's just mentally we thought we wanted to play more than they did. Daniel Jones from the Colts talking about Tennessee. Home fans booing. When you hear that and sense it, you try to take advantage of it. Worry about the chemistry on Tennessee right now. And certainly they've lost 9 straight games going back to last year. They're playing without 2/5 of their offensive line. Latham and Zeitler both hurt. And they had 23 penalties coming into yesterday's game. They had 8 more in yesterday's game. Really ill-timed penalties for Tennessee. I have the Titans and the Saints clearly as my bottom 2 teams in the NFL right now. And again, if you want to make money with bottom feeders in the NFL, September ain't the time to do it.
Touche. As somebody who loves disgusting underdogs, I will not be on the Titans this week, Teddy. All right, fresh in our memory is how bad Russell Wilson is and the New York Giants. 2 interceptions last night, and I said, all right, I'm going to bed. Nice, easy under on the cash, though. Shout out to John Murray from last call. He gave us that one before he signed off. So I will take Russell's shortcomings and not be able to beat a mediocre Chiefs team. But now we've got the Los Angeles Chargers headed into New York. I mentioned Brian Dable's seat is getting hotter.
This is going to be a pros versus Joes game. Absolutely. Because this spot here is horrific for the Chargers, for what it's worth. Horrific. Look at line LA 6.5, 45.5. My powering number 5.5 was 5.5 and 45.5 last night. And again, we're not seeing the 6.5s like you might expect to see against the Giants off of last night's another debacle. Even though their defense played well and their offense had chances. It wasn't like they were completely outclassed by the Chiefs in that game. They were in the game. They just couldn't do anything when they got in the red zone. And it is a Chargers team. Look, Herbert's seeing the field well. 5 different receivers had 4 or more catches. But the Broncos defensive line beat up on LA's offensive line, and Becton left with a concussion. That's a concern. They lost Najee Harris to a season-ending injury. That's a concern. They had 29 first downs for 9 for the Chargers, -2 in turnovers, outgained by 0.8 yards per play. They still won and covered despite the lack of explosiveness. But think about how they opened the season. 3 straight wins over their 3 division opponents, Kansas City and Vegas, and, of course, Denver yesterday. Now they got to travel east for an early start game. The wise guys will not be on the Chargers this week. It is a dismal, dismal spot. The only question is if the Giants have a better game. And I'm sure the Giants have something of a better game than the one we just saw. But is Dable going to lose that locker room? He could. And, when Russell Wilson gets to 1st and goal with a chance to cover late, and then throws 3 passes out of the end zone and 1 ill-designed quarterback draw, doesn't bode a lot of confidence for the G-men moving forward. They have no public support this week. And again, the pros and Joes will be on opposite sides for this one. You can sense it already, even on Monday morning.
And I don't blame the Joes one bit. Teddy, let's move along. Jaguars, 49ers. Up next, you talked about the Cardinals earlier in the show, and I mentioned this was a funny game to me because it landed 1. Cardinals had a shot to win it late. San Francisco was able to get the outright win. Jags looking more improved every single week. Talk about this matchup here and why maybe we should be looking at the favorite.
I'm not going to tell you why to look at the favorite. I don't want the favorite. Look at line. San Fran 3 and 44.5. My powering number is 4. The market's open 3.5, 45.5 last night, and that's basically what we're seeing today. We've seen some over money for the Niners and Jags, 46/46.5, the prevailing number. It's not like Jacksonville's offense worked real well yesterday. 4.4 yards per play. They went 4 of 16 on 3rd and 4th down tries. They got stuffed on the crucial 4th down tries, and Texans should have won but they fumbled it away. Brian Thomas had 3 more drops, and then he did have a catch and run on the biggest play of the game late in the 4th. This is worth noting. Last year, full season, 17 games, Jacksonville had a grand total of 9 takeaways. This year, 3 games, not 17, 3. Jacksonville has 9 takeaways, at least 3 in each of the first 3 games. That's the first time that's happened to them to start a season. So the defense making plays. As for the 49ers, Nick Bosa's hurt, Brock Purdy's hurt. It certainly wasn't pretty yesterday against Arizona. Christian McCaffrey making catches, but as a running back, he's not breaking tackles right now. Ricky Pearsall was great in yesterday's game, but they had a 1.6 yards per play edge. 5.7 yards per play on offense, 4.1 yards per play allowed on defense. A lot of positives from that win in San Francisco. That being said, they were a drop pass away from losing that game at home to Arizona. 49ers, not the type of team I'm excited about laying a price with right now. And Jacksonville, even though they really tried hard to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory yesterday, Houston did it better than they did.
This Colts team has been really exciting to watch. I know Teddy said he was on the Broncos in that game, so we won't call them a true 3-0 team. They got bailed up by the refs there last week. Same kind of thing happened, though, this week with the Rams. You've got 2 teams, I think, neck and neck here. One jockeying for position in the AFC, one in the NFC, both going to be solid in the playoffs. But what say you about this week 4 matchup?
Playoffs?
Yeah.
It's September. We're not worried about the playoffs.
Come on, Teddy. We got to get them pumped up. We got to get these teams. These are the types of teams. I want to see these good offensive teams in the playoffs. I like both of these teams. I think have a shot, maybe outside shot, to go deep into the playoffs.
Look at line, Rams -5.5, total 46.5. My powering number, Rams -3. The markets opened 3.5 and 48 last night. And we're seeing Indy support. We're seeing Indy money. Again, my number's 3, and I'm willing to go doodle you for this one. Let's get the betting, emergency betting alert out. You like the Colts? Grab 3.5. I'm not convinced that they'll be there. We're going to see Indy support. Indy's been pretty good. All right, they lead the league in yards per play. They rank 2nd in offensive expected points added. They punted once so far this season. They've scored on 77% of their offensive possessions. That's the highest mark for any team in the first 3 games off the past 45 years. They haven't won the division since 2014 when Chuck Pagano was their coach and Andrew Luck was their quarterback. I know the combined record of the teams that they've beaten is 1-8, but LA, how good, LA should have won yesterday's game, but Stafford wasn't sharp. They settled for field goals, and they've got significant injury issues on the offensive line. Multiple injured, hurt in that ball game, which was at least part of the reason why Philly was able to block 2 fourth-quarter field goals and return the second one for a touchdown with zeros on the clock in that ball game. When you have cluster injuries on the offensive line, Indy's strength is in the trenches. That's a concern for LA this week and potentially moving forward, especially with a QB like Stafford, who isn't going to be able to scramble away from pressure.
All right, here is a Bears team coming up, Teddy, that maybe it was finally that they played Dallas's defense, that they looked good. Is that what we're missing here? The Bears are taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. Our producer JH texts me. He goes, say something nice about Caleb Williams. And I said, I have the under. If he could stop throwing touchdown passes, that would be great. And it worked out well because Dallas looked offensively inept. Kind of break down this one. The Raiders opening up as favorites here shouldn't surprise anyone. But I'm not going to lie. At first glance, I thought, oh boy, the Bears are going to get a lot of support.
Look at line here, Raiders 2.5 and 47. My powering number comes pick 'em for this ballgame. The market's open 1 and 47. The 47s are gone. The 47.5s are mostly gone. 48, the prevailing number. There are still some 47.5s out there for this total. And the markets are looking at the Raiders right now as an over team based on their defense. But then again, given the Raiders' offensive line issues, and maybe they're an under team in that sense. The offensive line basically got destroyed yesterday. Gino got sacked 5 times. Jonty got hit in the backfield. He had 17 carries. He got hit in the backfield 11 of those 17 carries. The defense basically got destroyed. They faced a backup quarterback and only 4-6 incomplete passes, allowed 9.9 yards per pass to him, gave up 200 yards on the ground, gave up 7.4 yards per play. The special teams got destroyed. They gave up a punt return touchdown. They didn't do anything right yesterday. Pete Carroll, I have to do a better job. It's all 3 phases, so it's me. I have to do a better job managing our return. Home field edge for the Raiders. I'm telling you guys, there will be as many Bears fans as Raiders fans in that venue at Allegiant Stadium this coming weekend. Maybe more Bears fans than Raiders fans. So it is not it's a home game that the Chicago has to travel. The crowd support, not so much. The Bears week 5 bye, so last game before the bye. Caleb Williams was brilliant yesterday. 10.6 yards per pass attempt, 4 touchdowns, no picks. 4 different receivers caught passes of 30-plus yards. They still couldn't run, only 3 yards per carry, and they were +4 in turnovers. And, of course, this team, as fat as happy as it gets after the win. Worth noting, Caleb Williams' quote versus Ben Johnson's quote. Williams, quote, "It's awesome. The trust and belief and hard work and just all of it together to be able to have that hard work, this historic organization, have this moment. It's really important." Ben Johnson, "It'll be fun for tonight, and then we'll be back on to the next one. We're behind the 8 ball here, 1-2. We've got to get back to 500. So Johnson trying to get the team to focused. We'll see if that actually plays out. But like I said, the crowd support will be there for Chicago, even here in Las Vegas.
All right, Ravens play tonight, and then Sunday evening, afternoon, I guess I could say, here on the East Coast. They play at Kansas City. Kind of break down a little bit more of that Kansas City game versus the Giants last night. Teddy, I mentioned middle 4th quarter, I was like, I'm going to bed. This is ridiculous, Russell. And I was not overly impressed with Kansas City. I haven't been overly impressed with them this entire season. Baltimore, field goal favorite here?
Yeah, so the look at line, Baltimore 3 and 48. My powering number is only Baltimore 1, but I've been a little bit. The betting markets right now have the Ravens as the best team in the league by several points, and I don't have that in my powerings yet. So I'm a little bit off from the markets on the Ravens, and we'll see tonight if that's justified or not. Maybe I should adjust my numbers to match the market, but I got to see it to do it. I don't move my numbers based on air. So my number's 1. Last night we were seeing 3s and 48.5, and that's basically what we're seeing today. There are 2.5s out there for Baltimore. If they look good tonight, again, it's a parlay situation. If you like the Ravens tonight, you may want to parlay them here, and you'll get, in theory, the best of the number. As for Kansas City, there's certainly a significant revenge angle for all the teams in the AFC that are playing the Chiefs right now. And Kansas City's defense has made enough plays to keep them in games, but make no mistake about it. Right now, this is even with a truly elite quarterback, this is not a truly elite Chiefs offense early in the season. And the market certainly think Baltimore's is.
All right, we got about 10 more minutes here before we let you guys go into watching Last Call with Andy Lang. So we're going to get into Sunday Night Football here, Teddy. Green Bay taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Green Bay off that loss to the Browns. Cowboys looked, again, offensively inept to that Bears team. Kind of break down to this one. I said that I thought Green Bay was looking ahead to this matchup. They just got to go to Cleveland, squeak out a win, and it looked like that's what the result was going to be. And then obviously crazy play, Browns get the win. How does that change things looking from a numbers perspective headed into Dallas?
So look at line here was Green Bay 4.5 and 49.5. My powering number with no CD for Dallas is 7. We don't know yet what the status is of CD Lamb. I didn't see it before I went on air. I'm assuming he's going to be out this week. So my powering number was 7, and I made there aren't many teams that I'm going to make a significant adjustment for one wide receiver. Dallas, you adjust down when CD Lamb's not in the lineup. The offense is not the same. Markets opened 6 and 48 last night. We're seeing 6.5 starting to pop out there. And this line's going to move when CD Lamb's status is announced. If CD Lamb is hurt and not going to play in this game, we're going to see Green Bay money. If he is okay and is likely to play this game, I would expect to see at least some Dallas money. Again, the look-ahead line here was 4.5. Green Bay's in that last game before the bye scenario. All right. Micah Parsons, after the meltdown in the last 5 minutes, the last 4 minutes, really, of the Packers-Browns game yesterday. Quote, sometimes, just like today, you shit the bed. That's just the reality of it. It happens to the best teams. Even the best Super Bowl champs make mistakes, and they pay for it early. You go back to the history of the champions who've won, they played, and the games they should have won, it's just that competitive. So, the Packers, Jordan Love, ill-timed first interception since last November, and it wasn't a good pass. Josh Jacobs, 16 for 30. There was no running room. 14 penalties, 3.8 yards per play. 10 penalties in the fourth quarter of that ball game. 10 penalties in the fourth quarter, which is the most in the modern era for any team in any quarter. They lost 2 starting offensive linemen, Zach Tom and Aaron Banks. That's a concern here. And Dallas is coming off a -4 turnover game. Matt Eberflus facing his former team, and wasn't pretty. Brian Schottenheimer, quote, this can be a humbling business. If you don't take care of business, you don't play well, you're not going to win. We got to stop giving up big plays on defense. We got to stop turning the ball over on offense. It's a bad formula. First year, first time head coach. CeeDee Lamb is hurt. He's getting an MRI today. Trayvon Diggs and Kenny Clark got banged up. That's a key piece of the secondary, key piece of the defense. And this defense has been awful. Let's no make it. Russell Wilson threw for 40, 50 yards and 3 touchdowns against them. All right. Caleb Williams couldn't do anything against Dallas defense. He could. Dallas has now given up 12 pass plays of 25 yards or more in the last 2 weeks. 5 touchdown passes of 25 yards or more. That's worst in the NFL. This Cowboys defense is a problem. And again, if CeeDee Lamb doesn't play, we're going to see Packers money. I'd emergency betting alert, but I don't know yet what Lamb's status is. But I wouldn't argue with anyone that wants to take Green Bay right now at 6/6.5. It could easily be 7 or higher by kickoff. And I would expect the Packers, they're going to be focused for this one. And I don't know that focus matters all that much for this mediocre at best Dallas team.
Almost 3,000 of you guys watching between YouTube, X, Kick, Twitch, all the streaming channels. So thank you guys for hanging out with us here on a Monday. Teddy, this game is the battle of the 0-3 of the AFC East. This is someone's got to win. How about that? Who is going to win this football game, or who should we be betting? Or should we just say no thanks to the early Monday night game?
So first of all, I want to thank all you guys for watching live. We really appreciate those likes. If you like this type of breakdown, hit that like button. It makes all the difference for us. Comment below. Kelly and I both get into the comments every week. I get in a couple times. I'll be in today, and then again, I'll come back again tomorrow or Wednesday. And I try to answer every single comment or respond to every single comment. So I really appreciate those comments. Thank you. And of course, if you haven't done so already, what do we have? 220,000 of you who have subscribed to the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Get instant alerts every time these videos go live. Join the channel, WagerTalk TV on YouTube. When it comes to the Jets and the Dolphins, look at line here. Miami -2.5, 44. Is that a hook? 44.5. Sorry. My powering number, Miami -2. The market's open 2.5, 44.5 last night. And that's pretty much what we're seeing today. There are some threes popping up for the Dolphins. And obviously 2 teams that are struggling a fair bit in early season play. Tyrod Taylor's not good. All right. And Tyrod Taylor and the Panthers of backup quarterbacks, we know his name because he's been around so long, but Tyrod Taylor doesn't guide teams to victory. And that game's 23-6 in the fourth quarter. They had a blocked field goal return for a touchdown. Instead of Tampa up 9, it's the Jets up 1. And the D still couldn't hold it, even after a play like that. Aaron Glenn, there's no such thing as moral victories. We got to work next week. Look at the things we need to fix. We're going to hone in on that. They were outgained by 1.2 yards per play, only 4.2 yards per play on offense in that ball game. Sauce Gardner got hurt in that game. Quincy Williams got hurt in that game. And this is not a defense that can afford a whole lot of injuries. As for Miami, how much of it's Tua's fault? Tua takes all the blame for this. And of course, untimely interception cost him a chance to win. He's done that plenty. That came with Miami down by a touchdown, facing 1st and 10 on the 21, and it's a first down interception. That's tough. But he didn't have the roughing the punter penalty that changed the game completely in the fourth quarter. He didn't get sacked on 34 dropbacks, only 4.3 yards per pass attempt, though. No big plays for Miami, no play of 20 yards running or passing. They were able to convert in the red zone. They were able to convert on third downs. They rushed for a season-high 116 yards, but the defense has given up 30-plus in all 3 games. The Dolphins have allowed opponents to score on 18 of 23 possessions this season, not counting kneel downs. Those aren't the type of teams I'm excited about laying a price with. Mike McDaniel, quote, I'm never proud of a loss. We came here to win. I refuse to take moral victories. but it wasn't good enough. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, I'm not sensing that this line's going up, this total's going up. But, again, we're seeing a couple of threes popping for Miami, but I'm not convinced they're going to hold it. I'm not convinced the markets are excited about laying a field goal with the Dolphins. 2.5 still the prevailing number.
All right, Teddy. Second leg, 8:15 Eastern here on Monday night. We've got the Broncos. Oh, that was an interesting result. I know the bookmakers were not very happy that the Chargers were able to win that football game by 3 specifically, but then the Bengals, we got Jake Browning, 5 interceptions on the season. I think a lot of people thought in that Jags game, hey, we're going to be just fine without Joe Burrow. Not so sure anymore.
Yeah, Minnesota's defense is pretty good, but Cincinnati was a no-show in that game. Look headline here: Broncos minus 5.5 total, 45.5. My powering number: Broncos minus 6.5. The markets opened 7.5 last night. We're seeing a mix 7/7.5 this morning. Total 43.5/44/44.5. We're seeing a little bit of under money. And again, from the 7.5 opener, we've seen, I'll call it a little bit of Cincinnati money. I mean, the Bengals said they're, worst loss in franchise history. Chase Brown, 10 carries for 3 yards. Quote, put this behind us, we'll be just fine. The main thing we got to take away as a team is, we got to play with a chip on our shoulder, like F whatever people say. As long as we're good in this locker room, we'll be just fine. Of course, since he's the worst rushing team in the NFL, and they didn't run the football coming into yesterday's game, and they didn't run the football at all in that defeat. 13 drives, 52 plays, 171 total yards, 5 turnovers. Defense didn't force any. It was pretty awful. All right. Zach Taylor, this collective effort, talking about how bad the offensive line was. I didn't see the line have 1 turnover today, okay? I saw a bunch of other guys have 5. So clearly, this is on the entire team. Denver did some things right. They ran for 5.6 yards per carry against the Chargers defense. Cortland Sutton, 118 receiving yards. The rest of the team, 8 catches for 37 yards. Not pretty. First downs, they got out first down by 20. They had 10 penalties. They were plus 2 turnovers and lost the game and didn't cover. They let the lead slip away here. They let us lead slip away against Indy. They started 0-2 last year. They started 1-5 in 2023. Sean Payton, not winning many fans right now in Denver. As far as coaches and good coaching jobs this year, Sean Payton not getting a whole lot of awards from this better early on. But where's this number going to go? Again, we've seen some of the 7.5s get bought down to 7 for Cincy. There's concerns about Denver in this one, and I would not be surprised if we see more of that moving forward. The Bengals, even with their backup QB, they'll attract some betting attention. If you liked the Bengals, no argument taking plus 7.5 right now.
All right. If you'd like to partner up with Teddy, WT.buzz/TC to get on board with him at Teddy_covers on social media. We're going to get out of here because we're up against the clock. Make sure you guys hang around. Wager Talk Today with Andy Lang is up next. Good luck on all your bets this week, and we'll see you next Monday.